Okay, well, the Briggs WMB is in bits completely now, minus the crankshaft and valves. We couldn't get her to stay running, and put that down to a few faults. Just looking at the general engine, one of those is the needle valve in the carburetor. It has a bent tip, and I also think the fuel line is too big in diameter, letting too much fuel into the carburetor. Normally, this is the check valve, that's working fine, and normally that would be in the tank, and then there'd be a small copper pipe that threads on there, which I imagine lets the right amount of fuel in. And another problem that I think may be causing some problems, the inlet valve doesn't look like it has any clearance at all, so as the cam is spinning around, it's actually lifting that up straight away and letting far too much fuel in, I think. And yeah, we've also got plenty of blooming oil leaks, and one of these appears to be because of this front oil seal, which I shall take out now in the correct way and show to you, and show you what somebody has done to it. Right, so we're going to take this oil seal out now. All I'm using is a flathead screwdriver, and they're so easy to get out, I don't know how anybody could possibly ruin them. You just pop them under there and pop them off. That is it, and the oil seal is off the engine. And I don't know how somebody has managed to ruin this, but they've done quite a successful blooming job of it. And it's hard to tell on the camera, but it looks like somebody has taken a screwdriver, jammed it in there to pry it out, because it's really really deformed there, and that is just absolutely chucking oil out. Yeah, I had quite a bad oil leak from there. So this is going to be a long project, not because it's going to take a long time to paint or anything. This could the whole engine could probably be painted in a day if the weather was warm. So it's going to take a few days to paint it because of the temperature in the workshop here for the paint to dry. But the long process is going to be ordering, shipping the parts that it needs. It's going to need a few bits. The most expensive is going to be a fuel tank, and a fuel line is going to be another slightly expensive piece to buy, and these oil seals are probably going to be pretty pricey. It needs front and back, I should imagine. The amount of where is that? Oh yeah, here's the gasket that was in it, and this is absolutely horrendously thick. That's got to be a good 5mm thick, this gasket, and it's making a horrendous amount of end play, which isn't going to help with sealing the bearings at all, because you've got the whole crankshaft moving back and forward, moving the whole crank out of alignment with these oil seals, and that's really going to cause havoc as well. So hopefully with a thinner gasket we can get the end play to a minimum, and we are going to have to try and see if somebody locally has a puller I can use, or if I can find one cheap enough that will get this starter clutch off the back gear and pulley assembly, because I would like to take the whole crankshaft out, and it's the only way I can replace the back oil seal, and I would like to strip the whole engine apart. So there appears to be some nasty chatter in the gears that needs investigating. I hope there's no broken teeth on anything. Don't think so, because it wouldn't be meshing nicely at all. And there's somebody's a new gasket as well. Somebody has literally sealed everything with a paper gasket, but then has put so much of this horrible white, sort of like white silicone around it, and it's just gone everywhere. He's manky. They even used it on the head gasket, for crying out loud. Yeah. And it was so sticky, it took quite a bit of force to get this backplate off. Yeah, anyway, we've got everything else stored in this box, minus the coil. The coil is indoors, keep it nice and dry whilst we've not got it on the engine. May as well keep it in the warm. And this bluebeard thing is still peeing oil out of everywhere. Yeah, I don't think there's no date stamp on the back of the back plate like there is with the ZZ, but I do know the engine is from 1941. It was made in April of 1941, which is pretty easy to find out with the old spec plate numbers here. We're going to try and polish this up in a minute. Got a little dent to get out of it, and then we'll polish that up nice and shiny. Yeah, that should look pretty good. And, the ZZ is actually supposed to have one of these as well, but unfortunately its one is missing. You can see that fits there perfectly, and that's what the ZZ should have on the front of it. Unfortunately enough, maybe I could send a picture to that person on eBay that's making spec plates, and maybe he can knock me up something. We shall see. That won't be cheap either, but the ZZ does need that. I've got to do some carburetor work on the ZZ and get that going again. But yeah, this is going to take a chunk of money to get going properly. We may as well attempt to do it right. The bearings aren't too bad. They're pretty good. They're serviceable. They should be fine. The big end is pretty good. The connecting rod is pretty good. Yeah, it's just these oil seals and getting this off the back. That's going to be quite a job. And then we've got to use a file to increase the valve gap there, because I think the inlet valve wasn't seating properly, which is obviously allowing fuel into the cylinder when it's on its exhaust stroke as well, because it's a suction type carb. It's just constantly letting fuel in, and it literally flooded itself in a couple of seconds. So yeah, I think with that we should be able to get this engine going properly. We've also got a bit of a step here on the top of the bore that made getting the piston out a little bit hard, but once we've honed that out, I think I should be able to get rid of that just fine. Anyway, there we go. That's where we are with the old Briggs & Stratton WMB. Okay, we got the Briggs WMB and old 60s cast iron 75cc Suffolk block on the bench, and I'm just looking to confirm some of my suspicions that I think I can use a few Suffolk parts on this Briggs & Stratton, and I seem to be right. This is the WMB's cylinder head, and if we put that over now onto the Suffolk, all the bolt holes line up perfectly. So I'm going to order a Suffolk 75cc head gasket with the 6 head bolts, and use it on this Briggs & Stratton WMB, because the gasket set from America for this is $15 plus shipping, and it's going to take a while to get here. And I have gasket paper that I can make all the rest of the gaskets with. It's just the head gasket I want to get a proper one for, and it looks like I'm going to be able to use the old Suffolk head gasket just fine. I don't think it's going to be particularly any deeper and do anything with the compression I shouldn't have thought. I don't think it will. Well, we can but try. I mean, if it doesn't run for whatever reason with the Suffolk head gasket, we can just fit another one. That's no big deal. But I reckon that'll be fine. I can't see any problem with using the Suffolk head gasket at all. And also another suspicion I had was the size of the bores on these engines. So we've got a Suffolk piston here, which is a little bit dirty, but does fit into the WMB's bore. Obviously we're not going to use a Suffolk piston, but should this ever need rings, I don't think it does at the moment. It looks like Suffolk piston rings will definitely fit that piston, so that could save a whole heap of money as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking to see if some of these bits will fit. I mean, a Suffolk head gasket is what, £3 I think on eBay with free postage, compared to buying one from America and waiting weeks for it to come. I mean, some parts I've got to get from America, I can't odds it. The oil seals I've got to get from America. Same with the needle valve, it's got to come from America. But yeah, I think I can use at least the Suffolk head gasket, and if I didn't have gasket paper I could also use the Suffolk ignition backplate gasket here, because it is identical to the Briggs. And I could also use the Suffolk's sump gasket, but Briggs and Stratton have gone way overboard with how they've secured their sump down. And we have a hell of a lot more bolts. The Suffolk engine sump is held down with 2 bolts on either side here and 2 locating pins, but Briggs and Stratton have decided to yeah, go a bit overboard and make sure there's definitely no chance of it leaking oil. So I should make a gasket for that, and I'll make one for the backplate at the same time. But yeah, I reckon I can at least use a Suffolk head gasket, which should save some time and a little bit of money as well. But yeah, just looking at them, they're very similar. I do reckon the Suffolk has more in common with the Briggs and Stratton 5S though. I think it's more similar to the 5S, I'm not really sure, but yeah, we can definitely see some similarities between those two engines, most definitely. Okay, now that we've compared the Briggs and the Suffolk and identified that I think I can use a head gasket from the Suffolk engine for the WMB, we're going to clean up the spec plate here, which should be easy enough to do. We've got a small dent there to get out. I had those on the WD's one as well, so I know I can get those out without damaging the spec plate. We've also started to clean up a few other bits, started to get rid of some of that paint on the sump here, and clean the sump up ready to make a gasket for it. Gonna start doing the same to the engine's cover there. Oh, that's another thing. The really early Suffolk engines, the 50s Suffolk engines, the cowling is absolutely identical to that cowling. I could put that on a Suffolk right now. I just wouldn't have the holes for the pull start to mount on. That is the only difference between that cowling and the earlier Suffolk cowling. Anyway, back to the spec plate. Yeah, we're going to have a go at getting that dent out now, and then we shall use a bit of wire wool gently and polish it up, get it nice and shiny. Not much point of having a dull spec plate on a nice painted engine. Well, it will be a nice painted engine by the time we're done. Well, there we go. That's one pretty cleaned spec plate. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Looks a hell of a lot better without a load of red paint smothered all over it. Right, well, we'll put that in the box and move on to cleaning something else up.